The Lord God had a mighty prophet, Elijah. The Lord God needed the mighty prophet, Elijah. For in the days of kings who ruled the people Israel, the so-called gods of the neighbors became quite the fancy for Israel's attention and worship. Chief among them was Baal. Oh, how they chased after other gods from their very days of freedom from Egypt. But in the days of kings who ruled the people Israel, the so-called gods of their neighbors were plentiful in their land. For the kings of Israel took for themselves wives from the royal families of these other neighboring peoples, so that they might make allegiance and alliance, find safety, perhaps even create peace for the people that they ruled. Now, if you read of Jezebel in this book, not much praise will you find. King Ahab's wife must have been very powerful and effective as a queen in many ways. But the religion of her god Baal flourished in the land of Israel during those years, and so there was a crisis of faith. The mighty prophet of Israel's God came to challenge the so-called God of the Canaanites. If Baal was truly the ruler of the storms, as Jezebel's people proclaimed, surely this Baal could demonstrate his existence by sending forth fire from heaven. Lightning, you might say. A moment of truth for the people of Israel had come. Now, if I have titled this Fire and Brimstone and I have brought out this large Bible, look out. I'm just kidding. My eyes are so bad I can't read my other Bible anymore. So Ahab said to all the Israelites and assembled the prophets at Mount Carmel. Elijah then came near to all the people and said, "How long will you go limping with two different opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal, then follow him." The people did not answer him a word. Then Elijah said to the people, "I, even I only, am left a prophet of the Lord, but Baal's prophets number 450. Let 2 bulls be given to us. Let them choose 1 bull for themselves, cut it in pieces, and lay it on the wood, but put no fire to it. I will prepare the other bull and lay it on the wood, but put no fire to it. Then you call on the name of your God, and I will call on the name of the Lord. The God who answers by fire is indeed God." All the people answered, "Well spoken." Then Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, "Choose for yourselves 1 bull, and prepare it first, for you are many. Then call on the name of your God, but put no fire to it." So they took the bull that was given of Baal, prepared it, and called on the name of Baal, from morning until noon, crying, "O Baal, answer us." But there was no voice, no answer. They limped about the altar that they had made, and at noon Elijah mocked them, saying, "Cry aloud. Surely he is a god. Either he is meditating, or he has wandered away, or he's on a journey, or perhaps he is asleep and must be awakened." Then they cried aloud, and as was their custom, they cut themselves with swords and lances until the blood gushed out over them. Nice. As midday passed, they raved on until the time of the offering of the oblation. But there was no voice, no answer, and no response. Then Elijah said to all the people, "Come closer to me." And all the people came closer to him. First, he repaired the altar of the Lord that had been thrown down. Elijah took 12 stones according to the number of the tribes of the sons of Jacob, to whom the word of the Lord came, saying, Israel should be your name. With the stones he built an altar in the name of the Lord. Then he made a trench around the altar, large enough to contain 2 measures of seed. Next he put the wood in order, cut the bull in pieces, and laid it on the wood. He said, fill your jars with water and pour it on the burnt offering and on the wood. Then he said, do it a second time. And they did it a second time. And he said, do it a third time. And they did it a third time. So that the water ran all around the altar and filled the trench with water. At the time of the offering of the oblation, the prophet Elijah came near and said, O Lord, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known this day that you are God in Israel, that I am your servant, and that I have done all these things at your bidding. Answer me, O Lord, answer me, so that this people may know that you, O Lord, are God, and that you have turned their hearts back. Oh, then the fire of the Lord fell and consumed the offering, the wood, the stones, and the dust, and even licked up the water that was in the trench. When all the people saw it, they fell on their faces and said, the Lord is indeed God. The Lord is indeed God. Elijah said to them, seize the prophets of Baal and do not let one of them escape. God had so hoped that the people would have chosen a different path. Do you remember? The whole idea of a king was their idea. We want a king. We need a king. If we have a king, then we will be like all the other peoples. And God had told them, yes, you will indeed become like all the other peoples. Their kings will be just as corrupt and ruthless, because that is how kings are, God said. They demanded a king nonetheless. So God granted them the future that they chose. I know we remember David, the beloved of God. Sinful man though he was, a great and mighty king, David. And we remember Solomon the wise. The glorious days when Israel was not just like every other nation, mighty and more powerful than their neighbors they had become. But God had been right all along. The kings became ruthless men, corrupt men who no longer cared for serving the people, but ruling them for power and wealth. And our book proclaims that all of them paled in comparison to the evil that Ahab had done. Oh, Ahab. And when Jezebel came to marry Ahab, she brought with her the god of her peoples, Baal. She brought the prophets of her people's god, Baal, to take positions of authority in Israel. And for his part, Ahab began to worship Baal, and he built shrines throughout God's holy land to Baal. What were the people to do but follow? I mean, this Baal business seemed to be working. There was peace. There was prosperity, at least for some. and Israel had a name in the world. Do you also remember what the Lord God had once said? Well, really, the very second thing, the very second commandment. You shall not make for yourself a carved image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth below, or even the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them and serve them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God. I seem to recall that too, for it always caught me a little bit off guard. The God of the universe can be jealous? It seemed beneath the Lord God to carry such a petty impulse and emotion. Because you and I, we do the oddest and most regrettable things from jealousy. We seek the attention of others. We chase after revenge sometimes. We look for some way to make the one who rejects us see and share our pain so that perhaps a lost love will realize their mistake. This is jealousy for us. God said, I'm a jealous God. For the Lord God, however, jealousy means that we have begun, you and me, that we have begun to devise ways to abandon the very intricate teachings of how we are called to partner with God in caring for this entire created order. Kings seek power and wealth at the expense of justice for the poor. Have you read through this book? That really makes the Lord God angry. So, of course, when there is hunger, as there had been in these days, there is a crisis of faith. When there is war for the sake of dominating and taking from others, there is a crisis in faith. When there is depletion and destruction of the very land that produces our food, there is a crisis of faith. Those are all evidence, according to this book, that people have been chasing after another so-called God. It should be no surprise that this Baal could have been imagined by a sculpted figure of a man. The so-called gods and idols are always, by the way, really just projections of ourselves, aren't they? Something that we can hold in our very hands is something that we can control. Maybe God's jealousy is not about some other gods who don't even exist. Maybe God's jealousy is that we have loved ourselves to the point where we think that God is irrelevant. So Elijah summons down from heaven a fire so hot it consumes a thoroughly soaked altar and vaporizes the very water running through the trenches around it. A sight so powerful. The people that were there, they had no choice but to see that they had forsaken a holy truth for a dismal lie. A fire so hot that it melted the veneer of their self-worshiping ways. For that is what the worship of idols is really all about. Idols of of money, idols of politics, idols of health, beauty, idols of sex, idols of self-reliance and self-importance, idols of technology. That without a God whose wisdom and guidance comes from far above us and arcs always towards justice, we are playing with fires that consume much more than an altar and a bull. God sees that we are playing with fires that have the capacity to consume creation, leaving unspeakable suffering in its wake. One of my best friends is half Chihuahua, you know. The Murph dog. Murphy the Wonder Mutt, a rascal so ugly, he is actually cute. A very sweet dog who is mostly also a very bad dog. My little buddy loves everyone. His favorite toy is a little stuffed rabbit, a little rough around the edges by now. It's been 2 years since Murphy began chewing on this. He whips it from side to side in his jaw. He brings it to my lap so that I may throw it across the room. He drops it at my feet as if to say, "Look what I hunted for you." Last Sunday afternoon, a real deal rabbit, if there ever was one, snuck into our backyard. And Murphy's only about 10 pounds. So we can see this rabbit down below from where we sat on the deck. A big brown rabbit, darn near 10 pounds too. I thought he might lose his mind right there. He's a very wound up guy, charged to observe and protect, you know. Instead, he just went inside the house and got what was left of his little chew toy. His little stuffed rabbit, he climbed up into my lap and laid the rabbit down. So I threw it across the deck. Murphy just sighed and exhaled and put his head under my hand. "What's wrong, little buddy?" Murphy said, "That thing ain't even real, man. I've been chasing it since I was born, and it ain't even real." It's pretty profound for a puppy, isn't it? So I dug a little deeper. What is real, Murphy? What is real? Just rub my neck, would you? So I did. His tail wagged a little bit slower than usual, and he said to me, "That's real. Love is real." Isn't it, though? Someone once wrote that God is love. I'll tell you, it's never too late to start worshiping that, following that. Ever. It is never too late.